Jake Miller, a Medal of Honor recipient, arrived at the Starlight Grand expecting honor, only to find his reservation erased, replaced by a secretive Pentagon takeover. The air crackled with disbelief and fury as he faced cold indifference. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. 1. Jake Miller stood rigidly at the Starlight Grand's gleaming marble lobby, the weight of months of anticipation collapsing like a cruel mirage. The hotel's polished brass plaques and lofty crystal chandeliers mocked him silently, a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling beneath his calm exterior. He was a Medal of Honor recipient, a title earned through blood and unyielding courage etched into the fabric of his identity. Yet here he was, on the cusp of a long-awaited reunion with his family, met not with honor, but with erasure. The front desk manager, Carla Thompson, carried the weight of an impossible apology. Her eyes flickered with sympathy, but the lines of corporate duty held her hostage. "Mr. Miller, I'm truly sorry, but we have no record of your reservation on this floor," she said, voice carefully measured. "The entire level has been chartered by the Pentagon for a classified event. It was a last-minute contract. We couldn't notify anyone in time." Shock detonated in Jake's chest, a raw, burning sensation that quickly spiraled into anger so fierce it nearly shattered his practiced calm. The Pentagon? A classified event? That entire floor, his floor, wrenched from under his feet? How was this possible? How could the very institution he had served with unwavering loyalty turn around and bulldoze over a promise so personal? This wasn't mere negligence. It felt like a profound erasure. Months ago, when Jake had booked his stay, the Starlight Grand had proudly announced its program to honor Medal of Honor recipients with exclusive suites and VIP privileges. A beacon of respect and gratitude, or so he thought. Now, with one bureaucratic edict, that beacon was extinguished. The hotel's gesture of appreciation dissolved into a meaningless corporate gesture, leaving him stranded, disrespected, and invisible. Carla's words, though soft, were edged with finality. "I understand how important this is, and believe me, I wish there was something I could do. But the Pentagon's demands take precedence, especially on such short notice. We're contractually obligated to prioritize their event." The sting in her voice revealed the conflict she felt, caught between policy and humanity. Jake recognized it immediately. Carla wasn't the enemy. She was a frontline casualty of a system that valued protocol over people. Still, the betrayal burned too deep for sympathy alone. His frustration wasn't merely logistical. It cut to the core of his identity as a veteran and a man who had sacrificed more than most could fathom. Every deployment, every firefight, every moment spent away from his wife and 2 daughters had been in service of a country that now allowed a faceless bureaucracy to overshadow a promise made in his honor. The image of the hotel's glowing announcement, the promise to honor Medal of Honor recipients, now felt like a hollow lie. Jake's mind flashed to the countless nights in foreign deserts, the unyielding heat, the deafening gunfire, and the moments where his life hung by a thread. Those were the moments when respect mattered most, not in grand speeches, but in real, tangible recognition. And yet, here he was, shuffled aside as an inconvenient afterthought. The front desk area buzzed with indifferent guests, their chatter a harsh backdrop to the storm brewing inside Jake. Each polite smile and casual conversation felt like salt in the wound. He clenched his jaw, fighting to keep his voice steady. "Is there no way to make this right? No alternative arrangements? We're talking about Medal of Honor recipients, people who've risked everything for this country." His tone was firm, but laced with a hurt that made his words heavier than intended. Carla's expression tightened. "We've reached out to nearby hotels, but with such short notice, rooms are scarce. I'm truly sorry. We want to help, but—" Jake cut her off, the frustration spilling over. "Wanting isn't enough. This was a commitment. We didn't just lose a room. We lost respect." She nodded silently, unable to deny the truth in his words. Jake's heart thudded painfully against his ribs. The shock of the lost reservation mutated into a burning resentment, not just toward the Pentagon's opaque decisions, but toward a system that treats its heroes like obstacles in a bureaucratic chess game. How many others were silently sidelined, their sacrifices reduced to footnotes in an endless ledger of red tape? His eyes hardened with resolve. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be, not after all he had endured. As he turned away from the front desk, the glare of the Starlight Grand's grandeur only intensified the bitter reality. Honors spoken aloud meant nothing if they could be swept away by the cold mechanics of power and indifference. Jake Miller's fight for dignity had just begun. News traveled swiftly through the veteran community like wildfire caught in a drought. The Starlight Grand's failure to honor its pledge ignited outrage far beyond the marble lobby where Jake Miller had first encountered cold dismissal. Retired Army Captain Sarah Brooks, a relentless advocate with a voice as sharp as her convictions, was among the first to call the hotel, demanding answers. Her tone was unyielding, piercing through the veil of corporate politeness. She refused to accept that a civilian institution, long celebrated for its support of veterans, would fold under Pentagon pressure without so much as a courtesy call. Sarah's fury was rooted in more than disappointment. It was a fight against systemic disregard. For years, she had battled the bureaucratic labyrinth to ensure veterans received what they deserved: dignity, recognition, and tangible respect. The Pentagon's commandeering of the hotel, a last-minute hijack of promised sanctuaries for Medal of Honor recipients, felt like a fresh wound in an already long history of neglect. How could they prioritize secrecy over honor? She demanded during a tense phone exchange with hotel management. We are not collateral damage in some classified event. Across the city, Marine veteran Luis Hernandez bore a quieter, more personal pain. His mother had passed away just last year, her final wish to witness him receive recognition for his service delayed and ultimately denied by bureaucratic inertia. Luis's voice cracked with sorrow and anger when he called the hotel, his demand for respect echoing the silent grief he carried. The hotel's stonewalling felt like a cruel echo of the past, a reminder that for many veterans, recognition was not just ceremony, it was closure. Within the hotel's walls, the management clung to silence like a shield. The Pentagon's shadow loomed large, and no one dared speak openly against it. Fear of reprisal, contract cancellations, and lost prestige kept lips sealed and apologies rehearsed but hollow. Yet, behind the polished facade, Carla Thompson wrestled with a gnawing sense of powerlessness. She had poured her passion into cultivating the Medal of Honor program, believing it could be a bridge between civilian society and those who bore the scars of war. Now, with a single phone call from the Pentagon, all her efforts seemed to dissolve into thin air. Carla's conscience churned as she navigated the hotel's corridors, each step a reminder of promises broken and respect betrayed. The frustration was suffocating. She wanted to fight for the veterans, to restore what was lost, but the invisible chains of corporate hierarchy and government contracts held her back. Her internal conflict was a silent battle, unseen by the growing crowd of aggrieved veterans rallying outside the grand entrance. In the midst of this turmoil, Jake Miller took decisive action. Recognizing that anger alone would not restore their dignity, he reached out to his congressional representative, Karen Mitchell. A former military officer herself, Karen's reputation for advocating veterans' rights was formidable. When Jake explained the situation, her response was immediate and resolute. "This is unacceptable," she stated firmly during their first conversation. "The Pentagon's decision is short-sighted and undermines the very principles we stand for. I will intervene personally." Karen's involvement injected a fragile but vital flicker of hope into the unfolding crisis. Her promise to seek a compromise offered a potential path forward, a chance that the voices of those who had sacrificed so much might finally be heard in the halls of power. For Jake and the veterans community, this was more than political maneuvering. It was a beacon in the dark, a reminder that advocacy could still wield influence. Emboldened by growing support, a group of veterans organized a peaceful demonstration outside the Starlight Grand. Their numbers swelled with each passing hour, veterans of all ages and branches standing shoulder to shoulder, united in purpose. Media crews gathered, drawn by the raw emotion and principled message. Respect for those who served was not negotiable, and bureaucratic convenience could never supersede honor. Signs reading "Honor Our Heroes" and "Respect over Red Tape" fluttered in the spring breeze, voices chanting in solemn harmony. The demonstration was dignified but resolute, a physical manifestation of collective pain transformed into unwavering resolve. The veterans' presence was a reminder that their sacrifices extended beyond the battlefield. They demanded acknowledgement in every corner of civilian life, especially where promises had been made. Inside the Starlight Grand, the murmurs of unrest grew louder. Hotel executives monitored the media coverage, the demonstration's growing momentum signaling that this was no minor dispute, but a public reckoning. The flicker of hope that Karen Mitchell's involvement brought was tempered by the reality of entrenched bureaucracy. But it was a start. For Jake, Sarah, Luis, Carla, and countless others, the pain of disrespect was raw and undeniable, but so too was the burgeoning determination. In the midst of betrayal and silence, a fragile yet persistent hope took root that respect, once lost, could still be reclaimed. The relentless spotlight of public scrutiny and the looming threat of a congressional inquiry forced both the Pentagon and the Starlight Grand Hotel into an uneasy concession. The fortress of bureaucratic indifference began to crack under the weight of collective outrage and steadfast advocacy. Within days, the hotel announced a plan to accommodate the displaced veterans in suites immediately adjacent to the floor commandeered by the Pentagon's classified event. These were not mere substitutions, but spaces enhanced with upgraded amenities, a tangible gesture intended to acknowledge the initial failure and restore a measure of dignity. The gesture, however, was underscored by something far more significant than luxury accommodations: a public apology from both the hotel's CEO and a Pentagon spokesperson, broadcast widely and carefully scripted, yet sincere in its admission of missteps. At a press conference held in the ornate ballroom of the Starlight Grand, Jake Miller stood before a sea of reporters, veterans, and advocates. His uniform, meticulously pressed despite the recent turmoil, bore the weight of stories untold and sacrifices unseen by many civilians. Jake's voice was steady, commanding attention not through anger, but through a resolute clarity born of experience. He spoke not merely of his lost reservation, but of a broader, systemic failure, the too often overlooked chasm between institutional protocol and the personal cost of service. "We do not ask for special treatment out of entitlement," he declared aloud, "but out of respect for the lives sacrificed, for the battles fought not just overseas, but within the very systems meant to honor us." His words struck a chord far beyond the walls of the hotel, reverberating across the nation. Calls for reform multiplied as veterans' organizations, lawmakers, and civilians alike rallied around the cause. This incident crystallized a glaring need: a guaranteed system that prioritized accommodations and honors for Medal of Honor recipients regardless of competing demands, including classified government bookings. Legislative discussions began swiftly, fueled by Karen Mitchell's advocacy, who stood behind Jake as both a representative and a fellow veteran, determined to transform this moment of crisis into lasting reform. Within the hotel's management, the ripple effect of the controversy ushered in a transformation of its own. Carla Thompson, once a figure caught in the crossfire of corporate constraints and military mandates, emerged from the shadows with newfound authority and respect. Her relentless efforts to bridge understanding between veterans and the institution earned her a promotion. She became the lead coordinator of the hotel's veterans program. Carla's appointment symbolized more than personal vindication. It marked a commitment by the Starlight Grand to genuinely uphold the promises made to those who served. The program she now led focused on cultivating relationships, ensuring every veteran received tailored care, and preventing future oversights. Simultaneously, the Pentagon revisited and overhauled its booking policies, No longer could last-minute classified charters override the honored spaces for Medal of Honor recipients without oversight. Veteran liaisons were embedded within the scheduling offices to advocate for the recognition and comfort of service members, a structural change designed to prevent repetition of such disrespect. It was a small but pivotal victory, a recognition that honoring sacrifice demanded procedural as well as symbolic reforms. The resolution of the ordeal culminated in a deeply personal moment for Jake Miller. His family arrived at the Starlight Grand not just to salvage a vacation, but to witness the tangible triumph born from months of frustration and pain. Together they stood in the very suites once lost to bureaucratic edicts, now a testament to perseverance and advocacy. The hotel that had initially failed him transformed into a beacon of progress, a place where institutional failure was met with accountability and change. This chapter closed not on a note of bitter defeat, but on a powerful, resonant chord of triumph. The injustice that had ignited anger and despair blossomed into hope and action. Through steadfast persistence, Jake and the veterans he represented secured not only recognition, but a systemic shift that would inspire others to demand respect and dignity. The legacy of their struggle extended beyond one hotel or one government contract. It became a blueprint for honoring those who give everything in service to their country, ensuring that no sacrifice would ever again be met with silence or erasure.